Now, turning to days of the week and times of day, this is another data clock. As you'd expect, they start on Friday, and then in the early hours of Friday or Saturday and Sunday morning, certainly a lot of crime happens about then. In this particular town, doesn't happen everywhere. We have a particular patch on Thursday, every second Thursday as it turned out, which is pension day, which is where they some people get some rating. So that's fairly typical over most of Australia, but anywhere we can get these data clocks, they often tell a pattern. We've just done one for a arson events in a town in central Victoria, where we've got a big spike at 3:30 in the afternoon on weekdays. So that tells us most of those arson events are actually due to school children coming out of school. So data clocks can tell us a fair bit sometimes. This is an animation, I hope it works. Yes. This is supplied by my friend Jonathan Corcoran from the University of Queensland. It's basically monitoring here hoax calls to the Queensland Rural Fire Service. And they're just coming up by days, see the days of the week coming up here, and that's doing an animation. Now, turning to visualisation of space, we've got four main ways. We've got satellite and aerial images, which you're very familiar with. Vector maps, which are maps with little dots on them. Choropleth maps, which I'll show you in the future, and third-party raster maps. Now we're just going to turn to this town in northern Australia. There's nothing special about this town. I'll just fill you in. I know some of the up the back can't see, so just look at the monitor, the TV monitors beside you while I go through this. I'll just show you around the place a little bit. Down here is an industrial area down here. This is all residential areas. And just up here, this is the airstrip here, just up here, keep your eye on this part. This is where the shops are in the commercial area. There's a bit of wharves down there as well. So just recap. Industrial here, this is a sewage farm, God bless them. It makes them geo-referencing much easier. Industrial here, all this is residential, except for the shops up here. There's nothing special about this town, it's just what we're using for an example today. Over that, we can't do it at this particular location because it's identified, but over this, this is a land use map for a town settlement called Balgo in Western Australia, northern Western Australia, which gives us land use maps. If we wanted to go back to this one, we can use those land use maps and we stretch and pull them over there till they match, and then we have a land use map, but we can't do it with this one because it'll identify where it is. So just zooming in a little bit, I'll just show you around. This is, as you said, a screenshot of the GIS we use. This is a table of contents coming up here. It tells us what layers we've got available to us. This is the display window in here. And these are all the tools around there, which I won't go into today, but you can see there's a lot of them. They have drop menus down, and so there's a huge range of tools we can use. Now, for the geographer, he looks at this and he sees one thing. It's a very even grid layout of streets here and down here, and he sees this sort of cul-de-sac arrangement up here and down here. I know it's not very clear, but you can see a sort of garden city arrangement. That tells him straight away that there are actually three distinct layers in this town. He knows straight away that this area is built before the Second World War, because of very few places built with a grid layout after the Second World War. He knows that this area was built in the 1950s, maybe the 1940s, because that's when they did that kind of stuff. And he knows this place here has been built after the 1950s. And you can see just down here in this little part here, there's some new subdivisions going in. So you can see, well, this is a very recent part of the town. Don't forget up here, we'll come back to this, is where all commercial shopping centres is. Now, this here is all crime. I've fought for 5 years in this particular place. So here, quite a spattering of crime around here, and a concentration of crime up around the commercial centre. So how do we analyse that? Well, we can look, let's go back a little bit. This is the table that's sitting behind all this stuff. This tells us where the location is. This is a police database that sits behind all this stuff. I should have gone back and say this is what this map is representing that. And we can click on a particular incident, any incident here. I've just clicked on one example, and everything we know about that incident will come down there. So it's a very handy tool. We can put a hotspot map over the top of it there, which you can vary hotspots. This seems to be a pretty good representation of what's happening. So here, these two residences, here, another hotspot up around the shops, and a bit more around the industrial area down here. One of the problems with the hotspots is when you put them on, you can't see underneath. So we use contour tool, which I've just outlined the hotspots there, and then we turn them off. So this is the black line under here is the contour tool, again, which is showing the concentration of crime here, 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 around the shops, and a little bit down this industrial area down here. Now, we would like to look at some of the social economics that might lie behind it. Can everybody see the contour line here? Okay. What I've done here is I've turned on proportion of Indigenous. It's a proportion of Indigenous people identifying themselves as Indigenous over the rest of the population. The greener the dot, the greener the shape, the more Indigenous. One of the things I've used here is used collection districts. One of the beauties about crime, because it occurs in hotspots, it allows us to be quite specific with social economic geography. If we weren't using collection districts, we would have to go to the town or suburb location, which is the next one up, which would show that 25% of this town are Indigenous. By going to collection districts, we're able to get, well, there's hardly any Indigenous people up here, for example. This gives you able to be quite specific by using collection districts, which is a huge advantage. So each of these little squares here you see is a collection district. So you can see there's a reasonable, good approximation for the percentage of Indigenous and crime. And that occurs all over this particular state. Here we've got, it's reinforced, the blue dots are Indigenous crime, whether the victim or perpetrator was identified as Indigenous, and green non-Indigenous. So that is just reinforcing that. Just moving on to this one. What I've done here is actually map residential crime. Here you see quite a strong relationship between Indigenous and residential crime. What I've looked at with this map is family structure. This is a proportion of single-parent families with children under 15. Again, the greener it is, the more there is. Not a bad representation, but not great either, because you've got these fellows down here. Usually that's much better. Certainly in urban centres is a very, very good indication, the best indication we have actually.